Pay me, pay me, pay me my silver now. Pay me or go to jail. Pay me my silver now. Hey guys, Bix Weir, roadtour.com. I have the lovely, the talented, the sexy Andy Schectman on the line. Andy, how's it going?
Good, brother. How you doing, Bixie?
I'm good. I'm knee deep in the trenches, fighting the fight of exposing silver manipulation. It's crazy, crazy times, crazy days. I want to talk to you a couple things. First, we need to clear up whether or not the U.S. Mint is fulfilling their obligation to create silver eagles in the quantities sufficient to meet demand, as the law says. Now, we both had read an article in Numismatic News, I think it is. Yeah, Numismatic News by Patrick Heller called U.S. Mint Silver Shortages Explained, where he was explaining how the U.S. Mint is required by law to not overpay for anything, which is probably the funniest thing I've ever heard stated. But it is
$4,000 hammers, right?
Yeah. Exactly. But it is a law on the books in the US that they can't overpay. But what Patrick I think is missing is that the fair market value of a blank silver planchette is not the same as the fair market value of a COMEX silver contract. And anything that is paid over and above whatever the going price is of a silver planchette, a blank, is what the U.S. Mint needs to pay, because that's the fair market value of those at that time. If they are in high demand, so be it. The law clearly states they have to supply them enough to meet demand, and they clearly are not even coming close to that. So what's your take on that whole story?
Yeah, I mean, they certainly have been inefficient, because you look at the price on silver eagles for 2 years now, they've been double-digit premiums, and all of the other coins haven't been. There are 6 major mints in the world, the US being one of them. Then there's Canada, South Africa, Australia, Austria, and the United Kingdom. And all of them have been far more efficient than the US Mint. All of them have been anywhere between $5 and $7 a coin less. The interesting thing is that all of my career, they were between 50 and 70 cents less, not $5 and $7 less. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's that they don't, if what you're saying is true, and I don't discount it, and there is a shortage of available silver, maybe they don't want to exacerbate that by inciting tremendous amount of demand. The bottom line is this also, that this is one of the few profit centers for the whole US government.
I think you're frozen. Oops, sorry guys, we got cut off. Andy was telling us about the premiums and eagles being over double digits, which is crazy considering silver's only $20, $21, $22 spot silver, and then the other mints have no problems making coins. So what does that tell you? And is it just the incompetence of the US government, or is there something else going on?
I don't know. It's really strange, to be honest with you. When you see the amount of product that's coming out from the other mints, and the premium associated with it, something's not right. And as I was saying, I think before I got frozen here, the difference in price of all of these items, all of the sovereign mint coins, my whole career has been between 50 and 70 cents, not between $5 and $7. But what's unusual is that all of those items have maintained their relationship with one another. It's the eagle that has gotten crazy expensive. But when you look at the mint numbers, it doesn't jive, because the mint numbers, they're hardly selling any silver eagles in relation to the amount of demand that there could be. And so I don't know, something is amiss. I don't know what it is that's amiss, but something isn't right as it pertains to the silver eagles. Now, I also want people to understand that, we're bidding way, way, way above what I'm selling the other coins for. I don't know what the bid is. I haven't looked, but I bet it's $8 or $9, at least $9 over the price of silver to sell your silver eagles back to us. And so it's not just a function of us selling those silver eagles, or the industry or the mint or the distributor selling silver eagles at a high premium. It goes both ways. The bid price is unlike anything I've ever seen also. you can make an argument that it's not a bad idea if you had Silver Eagles to trade them in for kilo bars or for something else and walk away with a whole lot more silver. The question that I have more than any is this the beginning of a new reality? Rick Rule often talks about a matrix of investment in the United States. And he's always talked about this. And I was wondering the other day if it had changed, and he just said it again. And what he says is, if you take a snapshot of the entire financial matrix of the United States, starting with Joe Sixpack and ending with the Harvard Endowment Fund, the allocation to precious metals throughout the entire United States in terms of allocation per portfolio is 0.5%. And so, that's nothing. And in the environment that we see ourselves in, where stocks, bonds, and real estate are so high and just blown up to crazy proportions, but inversely correlated to the ultimate rise in interest rates, when that happens, you would have to be blind, deaf, and dumb to not notice the value found in silver right now. And my question is when the public starts to jump into the marketplace, is this a new reality? If it's double-digit premiums with 0.5% allocation to US portfolios, what happens if that number is 2.5%, which would actually be the mean or the average of the last 40 years? That's a 5-fold increase in demand. And if it's that big of a deal right now, what happens when the people that you've associated with, Bixie, forever, that know that you're into silver, but maybe have never really asked you about it, never really embraced it? And you can't really blame these people because equities have been a hell of a bull run for a long time. But what if all of a sudden they wake up and say, geez, I should have listened to Bix. I'm going to give them a call. When that happens, when you start to see a greater proliferation into the mainstream, and I would argue we have expanded a little bit since 2020, but when it really expands, when it represents a few percent or 5%, a 10-fold increase in demand, what is 5% allocation to a portfolio when everything else is melting down? So the one thing I can't answer is I don't know if this is here to stay, but what I will tell you is that they have not come down substantively at all since probably February of 2020. They've been a little higher, they've been a little lower, but in each case, you're talking double digits.
Well, a couple things. One, I would say the U.S. Mint is in on the conspiracy overall. They have a new Mint director who was the head of HR. They have an HR person as the Mint director, which means they're basically in hold on mode. David Ryder, who was, he knows his shit when it comes to the Mint. Was his second go round. He was the Mint director for Bush Senior, I believe. They brought him in, and he did that security thing with the bottom of the coin. Nobody knows quite why that was done yet. I think there'll be some kind of a marking put on there for a new monetary system. We'll find out. But when he left in October, basically the Mint shut down and is in kind of a mothballed. And this woman, Vitris Gibson, is the acting Mint director, and she was the head of HR. So when an entity shuts down, who do you put in charge? The head of HR.
Yeah.
So
well, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Right. But also when you're talking about, going from 1.5% to 2% of an allocation of a portfolio type of thing, when people start getting in, the big competition is going to be the green movement. They want to put in, and I wrote this down, in the next 8 years, they want 3 times the amount of solar that they have right now. So right now, it's, I think 120 million ounces a year is going towards solar. So they're talking about 360 million ounces going into, are you kidding me? Where will that come from?
Global mine production. Yeah, I don't know. And that's interesting.
And cars, they want to go from 5% of the fleet to 60% of the fleet electric vehicles, which is, each electric vehicle has 1.5 to 2 ounces in it. That can't happen.
Yeah, well, and that's one of the things that I think people need to understand, which makes silver so unique, is the duality in demand. Most assets, most commodities have one demand source. This is so far different when you see an expansion into green products like solar panels, like battery operated vehicles. When you see an expansion in digital applications, we talk about this Belt Road Initiative, something that I think really needs to be focused on more, where you're connecting 75% of human population. Now, people are just focusing on the bridges and the railways and the maritime channels and whatnot, where product and military will be patrolling these roads and these bridges and these airways in an effort to connect these two countries or these two nations, continents, and industrialize things. But look, you have 75% of human population that will be connected digitally as well. And so the application of silver in a digital application, or the fallout of that, is massive. And when you talk about an expansion into battery powered vehicles, into solar panels, and now the connectivity of 3/4 of human population on a new venture, you know, the need industrially for silver is extraordinary. But yet here again, when you look at the backdrop of all of the financial assets in the world that have all been blown up to obscene proportions due to easy money and low interest rates, where hedge funds can borrow tons of money. I mean, that's like Michael Saylor, you know, with Bitcoin. He borrowed all of that money and to add to his fund. Well, that's not unusual. And we've seen for many years now, for the last several years, big money borrowing money at next to nothing and using it to put into investments, into equities, into real estate, into the bond market, into the crypto market, and all sorts of things that have pushed prices up extraordinarily. And I think as interest rates rise and things start to crack, silver has to catch a bid from the people who have not had it on their radar, the funds, the hedge funds, the mutual funds, the advisors, and the public has to notice what a value it is. And when you see an expansion in investment plus a huge expansion in industry, there are very few assets on the planet that have that kind of a backdrop, where it's massively undervalued in the face of everything being massively overvalued. It has huge utility that is needed in everything from 500 ounces of silver in the tip of every Tomahawk cruise missile into expansion into solar panels and battery powered vehicles, into, since 2020, a massive renaissance in global demand. Last year, we had our biggest year ever. Over 95% of every sale we did was in silver. And that's crazy in a business that's doing almost $600 million. All of that, and I'm just one company, and I'm not the biggest. And so all of these companies who are providing silver to the public is just another source. So yeah, where is it all going to come from in an asset that is depleted in nature? I don't know. Maybe you do.
Well, let's get back to the investment demand. I've been doing research lately, and I think I figured it out with the help of our friend Jenny Moonstone and others. Where will that spark come from? The investment demand spark. I think it's coming from the same place it came from in the late 1990s. I think Warren Buffett has allocated, like he did in the 1990s, when he saw a supply demand deficit in silver, he put 2% of Berkshire Hathaway assets into silver. It wasn't huge for him. You know, I just watched his speech when he announced it to his shareholders. He said, it's not a gigantic thing for us, and we're not going to, be a Hunt Brothers and take over the market. We just think it was a smart investment that we can make money when there's a supply demand deficit looking out forward. And he was looking out at all the electronics coming, and all the governments had sold all their excess silver. Well, I believe that Warren Buffett has looked out and said once again that silver is in a supply demand deficit, just like he did before. He's going to take 2% of Berkshire Hathaway assets, if he has not already done that, and buy silver again. Now, the amount of silver at the current valuation of his assets is about $1 trillion. 2% would be $20 billion, which would be right around that number of 1 billion ounces or 800 to 1 billion ounces that Ted Butler's been talking about, the JP Morgan lease to Bank of America. And everybody's been scratching their head about Warren Buffett, why he's putting all his marbles into Bank of America as the stock. Instead of, he's coming out of Goldman Sachs, he's selling every other bank except Bank of America. And this really started in earnest about right around the time that JP Morgan got busted for rigging the silver market. I think my grand theory on this is that there was a deal struck between JP Morgan and Bank of America, or not even struck. It was required that JP Morgan give this silver or lease the silver to Bank of America. And we haven't seen 1 billion ounces come into the market in silver in the past 2 years. We have not seen that. So somebody has to be taking the physical delivery of that. I think that's Buffett. And I think that's how he did it. And that's why he's so invested in Bank of America. Bank of America has these things called silver structured notes that are kind of murky. It's a silver derivative. It's on their website. I think Buffett has struck a deal behind the scenes. And like he did in 97, 98, he didn't tell anybody he was doing it until he got called out. I think.
Well, I mean, it makes perfect sense. You're talking a legendary value investor. I mean, what value can you find that even begins to rival silver? Nothing. And that's what makes people so upset, Bixie, is that your logic is spot on, and they're all wondering why the hell hasn't the price taken off in this environment with this kind of demand. And of course, we don't need to get into a long discussion about COMEX manipulation because we both know that that's the real answer. But yeah, I think it makes great sense if he is invested that way in Bank of America, and Ted has done a wonderful job of showing that it is Bank of America who has taken that position and taken it from JP Morgan. Where is it? Where did it go? It hasn't entered the marketplace. So yeah, you're probably right. It wouldn't surprise me one bit at all. And that's what I was saying, was that how do you not notice in an environment where everything is ridiculously overvalued? How do you not notice something that is demanded the way that it is and needed the way that it is, and it's just sitting right at your footstep, and everyone just walks right by and buys something wickedly overvalued instead of looking at what is arguably the best value on the planet right now that has massive utility? That's always the argument against gold, whether there's more of it, as you talk about, greater supply than the world knows, or the fact that it doesn't have utility other than maybe jewelry or a little bit in terms of microchips or whatnot, but majority of it is used for investment. So with silver, the massive amount of utility and the expansion of utility gives it greater value, no question about it. How is it not noticed? Well, obviously, someone who's a value-oriented investor like Warren Buffett, if you are right, is noticing it. And that would make great sense to me, because it bothers me that people don't notice it. The fact that, I guess, you know what, I guess the price action makes it a little bit easier for people not to notice, but
that's it. That's what people chase. That's exactly what people chase. Even big funds, they chase price action. I think when it is exposed, I do believe that it is Buffett behind the scenes that has taken the silver, or is in the process of taking the silver, because it is the silver is on derivative contracts no longer than a year, and it's 800 million ounces, I think, that are left, and most of them come due the end of this quarter, next quarter, and then the last quarter of the year. I don't know how far it'll get if Buffett's taking delivery of all this stuff and the government doesn't come in and shut them down or whatever it is. But I do know, having worked for a company that Warren Buffett invested in, the moment he said, I'm going to invest, it was a company called GATX Corporation. We had rail cars all over the world, and we leased rail cars and mining equipment and things like that. When he came in as an investor, our stock doubled. And back then that was gigantic, because all of a sudden it's on the radar of everybody. And I think silver had the same kind of experience in the late 90s when Buffett said, yeah, I'm buying silver. And then all of a sudden everybody's like, oh my God, what's going on with silver? And they were able.
Maybe that's the reason this has all been so clandestine, where he's investing in Bank of America. And again, if it weren't for guys like you and Ted Butler digging this up and finding it, no one would know. So the fact that Bank of America has this position, the fact that he's investing in Bank of America, the fact that he's the one who originally funded SLV, whether it be by choice or by force, I'm not even sure. But the bottom line,
it was force.
Yeah, so it makes good sense, because there are very few things for a guy like him who is looking for value. Where do you find value in a world where everything is distorted except silver, distorted to the downside even? So yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense. And you know what they say, Occam's razor, when you're confronted with various choices, it's usually the most logical one that prevails. And I think in this case makes perfect sense to me.
I was doing the math on my show the other day. I was doing the math of because I showed a video of Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger talking about their silver investment, and they said, well, it's only 2% of our assets. So I went back and looked. They had 650 million assets, and they were buying silver at $5. So 2% came out to the 130 million ounces that they invested in. And then I did the math for the current asset base at Berkshire Hathaway, which was $1 trillion, which comes to 20 billion, and 20 billion ounces is right around the 800 to 1 billion ounces that today's market rate is. And I'm like, holy, can it be really that easy? And Occam's razor to me is yes. I mean, it wasn't completely easy. I think there's a lot of people, obviously there's a lot of people who don't know what's going on. Ted has done a great job exposing that. One, JP Morgan did accumulate this massive amount of silver, and he tracked all the inventories and where they're going, and JP Morgan taking it into their house account. And then he's tracked the OCC data, the Office of Comptroller of Currency data, that shows Bank of America put on $28 billion, I think, in silver and other precious metal derivatives. It all makes sense. It all adds up to this is what's going on. And ultimately, I mean, we should be very glad that somebody's taking this silver and not flooding it into the market. And clearly it's not being flooded into the market with all the shortages we're experiencing all over the world. So, Andy, if you're new to silver and you're watching this saying, well, I want to get some silver, what's the best way to, and I highly recommend physical silver in your own possession. I mean, it should be obvious from what was going on in Canada. If you believe in freedom, you're the enemy of the state. And our state is in a state of disrepair right now. So get your assets in your own possession. Andy, tell them how to get in touch with you, get in touch with Miles Franklin, and get some assets in your own possession.
So our new website's about 80% done. I've been saying this for a while. We had some hiccups on the back end and had to scrap it and restart it. Our new website's almost done, which will allow your people to do just that. And with the landing page that we provide you, we'll always make sure your people get the best price in the country and the best service. In the meantime, we're still old school, like we have been for 32 years. You send us an email at info@milesfranklin, and we will personally, either myself or one of my brokers will immediately get back to you. We will send you an updated price sheet. We will answer any questions. We never solicit business ever. We respect privacy, but we will make darn sure that the trust that you have in myself and Miles Franklin, which is so appreciated, Bixie, is certainly not wasted on me and won't be an issue. We'll make sure that your people get the best service, the best price. And it's as simple as that.
What have you got in inventory right now?
A lot. Right now, our inventory is as good as it's been in 2 years. I have UK Britannia's in stock right now at $5.75 over the price of silver. I have Kangaroos in stock. I have Eagles in stock. I have Kilo Bars in stock. Maple Leafs in stock. So I do have a good amount of silver in stock. And, that can change, of course, because once you sell out of current inventory, most of the primary distributors are running, 4 to 8 weeks back. So you place an order, you get it 8 weeks later. We do, not the client. So right now things are pretty flush because May was probably the slowest month we've had in 2 years. I went back and looked over the last 10 years, and May, without question, is always the slowest month, always over the last decade. I think that's, and in particular, after what we've gone through the last 2 years, it doesn't surprise me. People are just itching to get out. They're itching to get outside, to open up their cabin, to plant their garden, to do whatever it is. So there's been less interest. And again, it's still above last year's, which was our biggest year ever. But in terms of actual, the momentum, May has been pretty slow, enabled us to catch up on supply. So lots of stuff in stock, and that's important. We want to deliver right away in this environment. And so we are able to do that and make sure your people get the best price.
I would like to remind everybody on the road to Ruta that Andy can be flush with inventory today. And if we have a $2 or $3 jump in price of silver, he'll be empty tomorrow type of thing. So this is not a situation where you want to wait until the price starts going up or until someone says, "Oh my God, it is Buffett," or something like that. I think inventories can disappear overnight. I mean, one buyer can say, "Give me everything you've got," when there's this much money slogging around everywhere. So
yeah. Absolutely. And, look, you got a seminal moment here in about a half hour with the Fed coming out and announcing probably they're going to raise rates by 0.75% or 75 basis points, which is, don't get me started there. That's just spitting in the ocean with 9% inflation and federal funds rate at 1.5%. You're still negative by almost 7%. So that's not the answer, but I think you see a lot of reactionary movement often when this happens. And the reason I think gold and silver will go higher today in the next hour is simply because they knocked the crap out of it yesterday. And that's always what they do. They knock it knowing it's going to go higher. They beat the crap out of it so that it starts already 3 steps down before it moves 4 steps up. Little by little, we'll see it move higher. The only way you can successfully manipulate a market, Bix, over time is to push it in the direction it's going. And for the very first time in a very long time, we're starting to see, I think, a momentum, a shift away from the dollar as being the world's safe haven. And you don't have to look any further than all the deals that are being struck unilaterally usurping the dollar eastward. And I think that's going to be a trend that we continue to see. And when that trend ramps up into full speed, when you see perhaps OPEC open up oil purchases to other currencies, or all of these deals that used to be settled in dollars are settling in yuan or in ruble or in something else other than the dollar, it will only exacerbate the flood of inflation, the rising of interest rates, and the volatility in the marketplace, hopefully only opening people's eyes a little bit wider to the value you have in silver. So you're right. Inventory is very fluid. It's been the biggest challenge that we've faced since 2020. Right now, I would say it's as good as it's been since 2020, but it's not like we have $50 million of inventory. We have a decent inventory, but that can change pretty quick.
Yep. So get your silver today. Send Andy an email, info@milesfranklin.com, and we'll get back to you with prices.
It's really important that they put Road to Ruta or Bixie sent me on the subject line. It's very, very important that they do that. And that way they get treated with, with the white glove service. And I will always make sure of that, Bix. The relationship we have means the world to me. And I want to make sure that your listeners, your followers understand that it's something that will strive to make it a wonderful experience all the way around.
Absolutely. And he lives up to what he says. So Andy, thank you so much for spending time with us. Let's do this again real soon. I'm sure you'll be out of inventory soon. So get your orders in today.
And more importantly, I can't wait till your next roadshow hits the ground running. I'm going to be there and as much as I possibly can. And keep doing what you're doing, Bix. We all need you. Thanks for having me today. And I look forward to picking up where we left off real soon.
All right, Andy, take care.
See you, bud.